Hello, all, and welcome. We are back continuing our conversation on crisis leadership. Last episode, we spoke about readiness for change with that wonderful 6 stages of change model. Moving on, in this episode, we'll focus on how crisis can create progress and innovation. Our guest today, Susan Minaya, COO and Chief Learning Strategist of Minaya Learning Global Solutions, will be joining us throughout the entire series, along with some special guests. This episode featuring Gary Avin, Director and CCO of LCEC, as well as Rachell Gallagher, a crisis manager in the private sector for national critical infrastructure. Stay tuned to learn more. And we are back. Hello again and welcome all.
Hey, Dario. Good to be back. This
Good to
is
be
the
back.
last little segment we
Yes,
have,
this
right?
is our last little segment. Yeah, this is only a 4-part series. So welcome back. After the change conversation, this feels more like it'll be a little bit more uplifting, right?
After the exhausting change discussion, yes.
After everything that crisis leaders have to go through and manage, this feels like it'll be a more relieving. I feel rested now as well.
Oh, good. Well, this conversation can be about the positive side of crisis. So let's focus there.
Okay, we'll focus there. Tell me more.
Well, if you look at it like while recovering from crisis can be a really great goal, I think the key point we want to bring up today is really that innovating through crisis is even better. And we begin to transform as leaders through this process. If you recall, we started out as a crisis leader, then we moved into a change leader, and now we're becoming more of a transformational leader, right? In the case of innovating through crisis. So you're going through these different stages as a leader as you're helping people through the crisis situation. And there's many different leadership styles that are required at certain times, right? And so when we're leading through crisis, we have to be all these things to help our people in our organization or in our community be able to kind of emerge stronger, better, right? So this is a great notion. And I love the thought of the innovation, because one way is we can just recover and we're back where we started, which doesn't sound so great, does it? Or we can actually do things that are innovative because of what we've learned through the crisis process. And this is where leaders need to be looking for opportunities to reinvent work, right? Or reinvent the way that we do things, how things are done. Being curious and focusing on things. What did we learn that started moving us in a new direction? Or what paradigm did we have about the way we did things before that it's changed because of what we went through? And so I can talk about this, but actually I'm sure our guests have many more interesting things to say that can illustrate this point. So especially given the breadth of crisis leadership experience each of these individuals have, and being in organizations leading people and leading their communities. What do you say?
I agree. Yeah, let's check in with them. Rachell, I did want to come back to you. So have you had experiences in your crisis leadership where you innovated new ways of doing things because of the crisis?
Absolutely, every time. Yes. And I think this is, again, one of those mindsets you need to set as a leader to be open to these new ways. So I can remember running a very large response to a very large crisis that shall not be named. And in the response, I would always set up my teams like, guys, this is how we're doing it. This is based on this information. This is how we're doing it. However, if at any moment you see a way we could do something better, we're going to try it out and see what happens. And every time I was amazed at the innovative thinking and creativity that my teams had, and just different insights of things that I hadn't ever thought of. So it was my job to set that tone of we're here to innovate. I have a plan. Don't be afraid. I'm not making you make up the plan as we go along. Like, I have a plan. We're going to do it. We're going to do it well, and we're going to resource it as we need to. But if during this process you see a better way to do it, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't work, all right, we go back to the plan, because we always have that to fall back on.
Right, so.
I mean, we're not flailing out here, but
that default.
Yeah, but there's always a better way to do something. And every single time, it never failed me. I learned things that I had been very limited in my thinking. It has to be this way because this, and they're like, oh, we can do it like this. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, that's like, don't you love inclusive thinking? And
Yes.
people's experiences and the things that they bring to the table really do create that kind of those wonderful different perspectives and points of view. But what you did is you invited them to do that.
Absolutely. And I could tell, so I would get a new team like every time, and I would have to kind of show them again and again, no, I mean it. When I say, if you come up with something better, we're going to do it. I mean, we're going to do it right now because we don't have time. So if you think it's better, let's go. And I can remember there were some times where there had been people who had ideas that wouldn't speak up. They'd, chatter among, it would be so much better if we did it this way. That always happens, by the way.
Yes, it does.
Among the
Everybody's, I
ranks.
feel like, has an opinion at something, and it's like
yeah.
something that comes to mind, and it's not to knock it down, but they just,
Yeah. Well, it's just not in the culture
yeah.
to bring it up. So you just chatter amongst yourself of, I could do this so much better. And yeah, you probably could sometimes. And sometimes maybe not, but sometimes, yeah. So there would usually be one person who would have an idea because they were just done. They're like, this is broken. We need to fix it. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And then when other people saw how I welcomed that innovation as a leader, more ideas would start flowing. And some of them were bad ideas. And that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you don't put it out there, how do you know?
Absolutely.
But discussion, right? And can spark something else in somebody else's mind.
And
So
that's exactly what it was, is what was quote unquote a bad idea would lead into, number one, what assumptions are being challenged by this idea, which was incredibly helpful. So maybe the solution wasn't great, but you're telling me there's a problem I didn't recognize before.
Yeah. So
that's helpful. And then it sparks other people's ideas. And then how you judge those. Clearly, I would never say that's a bad idea. I'd be like, well, there might be some, I see some challenges with that,
Yeah.
but I love where you're going with this. I see that you're telling me there's a problem with this. Any other ideas? Here's what we have. We don't have that thing. Maybe we could do it with this. And then you begin this back and forth conversation. You bring other people in. It's that team. And once you have that trust within that team, that's golden. You can do anything.
You can. You're just like invincible. Like you put on your suits and capes and you're like, I can do this.
Or superhero.
No, I've seen
Absolutely.
teams like elevate themselves that way because of that type of interaction and that openness and the ability for people to be themselves, be able to say what they think, and just trust is so much at the base of that, really.
Absolutely. It is trust. Trust is 100%
Yeah.
what's required in this dynamic.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
that was wonderful. Yeah. Gary, shifting over to you, have you had experiences in your crisis leadership where you innovated new ways of doing things because of the crisis?
Yes. After every major crisis, we try to regroup shortly after and talk about lessons learned, right? It's still fresh in our minds. It's still, what did we miss? What do we need to improve on? What were some of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities? You talk through all that and create a list of things that we need to incorporate in future plans. And remember, I kind of briefly spoke on the government portion of it and their
right.
involvement. We created a new department for that to really prepare for that
wow.
part of the government influence or even mutual aid that we'll need going forward. So lots of opportunities that were gained that we needed to learn from to better prepare us for future crises. And we always pray we never have a crisis. If we never have one in my lifetime, I'm for that.
You're good.
But I will know that I've prepared future employees in our organization to be prepared for it because we documented the opportunities and strength and things we did well, things we need to improve on, the departments that have grown since because of the crisis and the government influence that was needed on our end, at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level. And if you think about my greatest learning opportunity was definitely around that and understanding how much we're tied in the hip with government, their ability to communicate out to to our community, to our members, and them knowing what we do and what we've learned from this crisis. So definitely the government portion of our relationships with government was definitely an area that I learned from, I gained from, and we as a company have really improved on.
Wow. Yeah. Thank
See?
you for sharing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your experiences and wisdom with us during the Crisis Leadership Podcast. It was great to hear from all of our guests as well. Obviously, Susan, as the mainstay for all of this type of information and knowledge that we gained from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dario. And thanks to our guests. We really appreciate your expertise and your stories because stories bring things to life. Right?
Indeed. Stories do bring things to life. All right. Again, well, thank you all for your insights into this topic. Now, as an additional note, This conversation on crisis leadership and the idea for this podcast came from a place of not only experience in a professional context, but also a personal one for us here at Minaya Learning Global Solutions. We see value in what we have to share for a multitude of reasons, and we have so much more to share on this topic. And if this content connected with you, or you'd just like to hear some more about this type of content, please reach out to info@minayalearning.com. That wraps up our series on crisis leadership. We hope you enjoyed and gained some insights. Until next time.